Welcome to this episode of Random Life, and your host is Salima. And I want to talk to you today about the topic that keeps coming up a lot in many people that I coach, especially on transitioning in the funding crisis that's happening currently in the humanitarian context. And also in my own life, I've seen that happen as well, which is the topic of why bother, right? Why bother doing this? Why bother making the effort? Why bother pursuing that transitioning goal? Why bother even applying? And because it won't work anyway, right? And if that's the feeling that you've been having and that's the energy you find yourself in, then this is for you. So I want to talk today about why we need to talk about this, why we need to do something about it, how this impacts us, and also what to do about it, right? And by the way, thank you so much for all the people who've been sending me amazing messages about my mom. I really receive it, and I'm very, very grateful for your support as we're going through this difficult times with my mom, with my family. So she's, by the way, is doing better. She's in the village, and I'm so happy that we were able to bring her home and she's getting the treatment there. So I want to talk about this why bother topic, and the way that it can show up in your life is why bother doing the application process in the way that really you produce high quality application for applying for a job, and the feeling of why bother may come up where you feel like, well, it's not going to work anyway. There are so many people applying for the same job. Why bother even doing a good quality application, right? So that's one way that it may show up for you. Another way is a lot of humanitarians tell me that, well, I don't want to work in this sector anyway, but I'm doing it anyway because of ABC reasons. But why bother doing the work? Because it's not really what I want to do. Or another way that it may show up is especially when I coach humanitarians to become their own bosses and they start doing things and create the outcomes they want to, especially like 10K, 20K a month, 50K a month. And then they also tell me why bother trying all of this effort, giving all of this effort because it won't work anyway. So that's why I'm not going to even try to get to that outcome, right? And when you see these type of why bother energy, the reason why I think we need to talk about this is it's one of the fastest way to depression or burnout or to a feeling of disappointment. I feel like it's a highway to feeling disengaged, feeling apathy, feeling like it's not going to work anyway, feeling disinterested. And you know those people when you just like I was coaching a client and she was telling me that her supervisor is so disinterested in anything and he's just doing all the minimum necessary without really even like bothering about anything. And I feel like that's really what we're going to end up feeling is we feel disengaged, disinterested, sarcastic, maybe cynical, and just not really even going and doing the work. We just become in this functioning survival mode when we keep feeling like, why bother doing this? Why bother doing that? Everything is doom and gloom anyway. And then like slowly and slowly we get into the place where we are just staying in the survival mode of saving energy and not really doing things because we really want to do them or we really believe in doing them. We feel enthusiastic about them. We lose all of those human qualities that we actually want to have and we want to thrive and grow in life, right? But instead, when we keep going into the why bother energy, we go the opposite direction. So think about how that impacts you in your own journey of transitioning when you keep feeling like you are in that state of why bother, right? So the way that it can impact you is it makes you just keep ticking the boxes and not really putting the effort and not really going all in on doing the things. And guess what? You will not make that successful anyway because you're just ticking the boxes, right? Excuse me. And it also wastes a lot of energy because you're just like you're spending that time and energy anyway. It's just you're not doing it out of like wanting to make this really work in the way that you want to, and therefore you're doing it out of why bother energy, which does not really yield the results you want. At the same time, you end up spending that time and energy anyway, and then in the end, feeling even more frustrated, right? And another way that I have seen in my own life is when I think, why bother? I don't even tend to get curious as to how I could make this work, but instead I just judge myself and judge my ideas of how it could work, and I make the conclusion of not even getting to the outcome that I want to, and then like keep doing things for the sake of doing, even though it's not really for my own sake. It becomes like for the sake of this procedure, or for the sake of this process, or for the sake of ticking the box, or maybe for some people. That I coach, that it becomes like for the sake of maintaining the system, maintaining the procedures, and not really for the sake of creating the outcomes that we desire, right? So therefore, it also becomes an energy that keeps making us quit a lot because we just keep feeling like, oh, why bother even trying? It's not going to work. So let me try something else, and let me try something else. And then we just become like people who keep hopping from one thing to another and not really knowing and finding out why and how we could make it work, right? So therefore, it becomes this energy that keeps us derailed from the actual outcome that I want, that we want to. And I was thinking also if I can give you an example of how destructive this energy would have been if I had if I had used it to if I had used it in my own transitioning journey, right? So imagine if I had told myself when I was transitioning that why bother even replicating my UN P3 salary because it's not going to work anyway. Why bother? Then I wouldn't have been able to even learn how to replicate my UN salary doing what I love, and I wouldn't have been able to even learn to become the person who creates the outcome that I desire. And most importantly, I wouldn't have released the identity of I can only make the UN P3 type of salary within UN setting. But instead, because I didn't give in to this why bother energy, I didn't follow and pursue that why bother energy. Therefore, I was able to replicate UN P3 salary and so much more, and gain the freedom of doing and pursuing what I really love outside of the UN context, and still continue maintaining my lifestyle and being with my loved ones. All of that were possible because I decided I don't want to be in the energy of why bother, right? Even though it would have been so much easier for me at the time to say, why bother pursuing this when I know that it's not going to work? Why bother wanting to like replicate my salary, yuan P3 salary, when I know that I don't have any example of that being even possible? Why bother doing this while like doing what I love? Because that's even not possible. It's not stable. If I had to told myself, then I wouldn't have experienced what it is like to be living on the other side of transitioning, where I know now that I have the ability to replicate the UNP3 salary and beyond. I know now that I have the ability to pursue what I really love all the time. I know now that I have the ability to create my own safety and stability and certainty without relying on the external circumstances. I also been able to create the situation where I no longer need to apply for any jobs anymore. I also created a condition where I enjoy my freedom doing what I love instead of keep following the framework that I don't believe in, right? All of those were possible because I didn't give in to why bother energy, right? So that's why it's such an important topic that I find that we all need to think about how this why bother energy is impacting us in doing things and not doing things, right? A lot of the time people tell me that why bother energy is so strong that they can't even get themselves to do their work. They can't even get themselves to even decide where to start because they just keep feeling like, why bother trying this thing? Why bother trying that thing? And then they don't even go and pursue one direction. They keep confusing themselves with so many different directions, or they keep staying in the indecision because they feel like if they go this way, it's not going to work. If they go this way, it's not going to work. Therefore, why bother doing it, right? And this happens when we haven't emptied a lot of our emotional baggage. We haven't decluttered our emotions. That's why it keeps happening. So that's why what we want to do when this feeling of why bother happens is we want to release a lot of the emotions that are stopping us from actually pursuing what we want, right? Because maybe we have had a lot of disappointments before, we have had a lot of failures before. We have had a lot of things didn't go the way that we wanted. So we have accumulated a lot of those emotions. And as long as we don't release them, then we keep feeling like, why bother? Because why bother then keep saving energy, and because we're just spending a lot of those energy on the emotions that we haven't released, right? Therefore, we don't even have the resources, the energetic resource or headspace, excuse me, to be pursuing what we want to, right? So that's why I would like to suggest the first thing we want to do is looking at when we think of why bother, what are all the emotions that come up? Maybe emotions of the disappointment from the past, maybe emotions of how you will be disappointed if things don't go well. Whatever those emotions are, we want to release them, we want to process them, and then the next thing we want to do is understanding why do we want to bother, meaning why do we want to do it anyway, why do we want to do it in the best way possible anyway if we're going to do this, right? So that's the important part. So here is how I have decided for myself when the energy of why bother comes up. Why do I want to bother anyway doing it? Why do I want to put this effort anyway? And I want to share my reasoning why I want to do that. So in case it's helpful, you can apply and adopt this to yourself as well. So one of the main reason why I want to do this anyway, why I want to go for the thing, for the outcome that I want to pursue anyway, is so that I want to become the person who creates the outcomes I desire at all times. And the more I learn how to create the outcomes I desire, the more I learn how to become that person, and the more I become in charge of creating the outcomes I desire, which then gives me a lot of freedom to be able to only pursue things that I want to, right? So therefore, I want to be the person who creates the outcomes I desire. And in order to do that, I don't want to just stay in the why bother energy. I want to be in the energy of whatever the outcome I desire. I want to be the person who puts all the efforts necessary, all the mindset shift necessary, all the energy necessary, to all the commitment necessary to create or come close to the outcomes I want to. I want to be that person. I want to be the person who's committed to creating those outcomes because it is about my life, right? It's about my energy, my way of spending my time on this earth. It's my life of creating impact I would like to. All of this about my life. So therefore, why wouldn't I want to spend that time and energy and resources that I have on the things that I want to create instead of keep arguing with myself or keep going against myself or keep sabotaging myself saying, why bother, as if I'm doing this for someone else, because I'm not doing it for someone else, right? I am doing it for myself. So if I am doing it for myself, like even if the job that you're applying for, right? Even if the job that you're applying for that like thousand other people are applying for, if you approach it from no, 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 I'm doing it for my own sake of getting better at doing this application process, and most importantly getting better at creating the outcomes or getting the outcomes that I really want to, so that I become the person who knows how to create those outcomes, then obviously I want to do a good job of like working on the application in the best way possible, because I'm choosing to apply for that job, right? It's not like no one is forcing me. I'm the one who's choosing to apply for that job, even though like the situation feels like forceful. But if you keep feeling like forced to do that, then you will keep feeling at the effect of decisions of others, or at the effect of or powerless in the situation that you are in. But the only way to gain that power is by saying, okay, I'm choosing to apply for this job, I'm choosing to stay in the sector, and I'm choosing also to give or to create or to write the high quality application, because that is what will get me to being the person who gets to the outcome that I want to, instead of feeling powerless and keep doing it anyway and keep wasting a lot of time and then keep receiving the outcomes you don't want to and then feeling like even more defeated. That is the energy we don't want to, or that's the experience we don't want to, right? So therefore, every time that I'm going for the outcome that I desire, every month, in fact, that I do this, I always feel like, okay, how do I get closer to that outcome that I want to? How do I learn from this process? How do I become the person who genuinely creates the outcomes that I desire? And every time that I do this, I get better and better doing it. And the more better I get, the more energy I create, because I feel good about myself having done all the effort needed, having committed to it fully until the end, having gone all in on this, instead of doing it for the sake of whatever, or I don't care, or I will just do the best I can and then see. And this energy I feel is not going to create the outcomes we want to. And especially, it's not going to create the exact outcomes that we want to. So that's why my reasoning is I'm not allowed to judge my own ideas and desires. I am not allowed to make conclusions without having tried fully, without having committed fully, and without having learned fully why and how I'm not getting to the results and outcomes I want to, right? And also, I don't want to apply any energy draining uh, behaviors or thought processes. And I feel like why bother is one of those energy draining ones, and I don't want to be doing that. And also, I want to be like, I want to be doing these outcomes that I really want to. I want to keep pursuing those outcomes that I want to, because the alternative is I keep creating the past that I don't want to, right? And I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be the person who keeps creating the past every time because I'm afraid of being disappointed in the future. I rather want to be disappointed in the future every time, but every time I create something new, and every time I create the bigger outcomes that I want in my life and for my people, so that I get even more like growing and learning from the process, and the process itself becomes a very exciting one and a like experimental one, instead of, oh, right, I don't want to do this, why bother, and this kind of energy. So that's why I want to keep refreshing my energy of, okay, I want to do this. And the reasons why is I want to be the person who creates big outcomes that I want in my life, and who supports other people in creating big outcomes in their lives. And therefore, I want to be the person who goes all in and who's committed all the way until the end and becomes the person who decides this is what I would like to, and then goes and creates it. And that's why I think it's worth bothering and doing it anyway. And I would like for you to do that as well in case this speaks to you. So if you'd like to work on this, I would love to work with you individually. I have several spots opening until 15th of July. So if you'd like to work with me individually to get to these outcomes and become the person who no longer gets into depression or burnout because you're always creating the outcomes that you want to, then absolutely come coach with me. You can message me, excuse me, or go to my website, asalarmanova.com. Okay, my dears, have a